And Brightman, founder and CEO of the Brightman Group, and I am really happy to have you all with us today. I have to say that of all the webinars that we have done so far, this one has generated more interest and more registrations than any other webinar we've done. And I think that says something about the topic that we're going to be discussing today. For families that are thinking about moving to Portugal, we talk a lot about property, taxes, healthcare, lifestyle, visas, whatever. But if you have kids, there's another decision that can be a lot more important than any of those. Where are my children going to go to school? And once you start looking into it, the questions just keep on coming. Should we choose a Portuguese public school? Should we choose a private school? Should we choose an international school? Should our kids be educated in English or in Portuguese? What happens if we move them at 6, at 12, at 14? Are they going to integrate into Portuguese society, or are they going to live in that international bubble? And will the curriculum that we choose today help or limit their university choices tomorrow? Increasingly, I think that parents are asking an even bigger question. What exactly are we educating our children for? Because the world our children are going to inherit looks really different from the world that we grew up in. AI can already write, translate, research, analyze code, solve almost any problem that we assumed previously that human beings could resolve. So maybe the question really isn't simple. Which is the best school? Maybe the better question is, what kind of human being do I want my child to become, and what kind of education will help them to get there? This is really, but children aren't interchangeable. So I want to begin with that. I'm going to start with you, Tim. How do we know which school is actually right for our kids and not simply the school that's considered to be the best? And what should parents be looking at beyond rankings and reputation and everything else that people are telling them?
Obviously, you've got to put your child first. And the good thing about Portugal is that there's really a lot of good schools. There isn't any horror stories, really. There are good schools. And if you put your child first and you start looking at, what kind of curriculum will suit him, what kind of passions does he have, what kind of flexibility does he have, what's your lifestyle, all those kinds of questions. And by putting your child first, you'll probably understand that not every school is going to meet those. So you start to take some of those off. And then obviously you also go to see that what's maybe good for one kid isn't good for your child. All right. So I think the risk normally is that you hear about the choices because lots of parents tell you something. But the truth is it hasn't worked. If you go to every school, you're going to hear something bad about them. And that's just the way it is. And you should, give it a try. You should do as much research as you can. But in the beginning, really look at the curriculum, look at flexibility, look at what is your lifestyle, how much do you travel, when do you travel? So those kinds of things are very, very important. And I think answering, which one's going to be the best is always going to be quite tough. The good thing about it is that we don't have many bad schools here. Portugal attracts really great teachers. It's a great place to live. So we're getting good teachers. At the moment where we are in the world, we able to have had quite a lot of investment into new schools. So, there's some beautiful schools that have been set up, and again, with really good methodologies and people that are running them. So I wouldn't stress so much. I would just, answer the question, what's really nice for your child? Where does it come from? Has he got a curriculum? What I can tell you that could be very tough, and some parents really want to do that, is putting them directly into a Portuguese school. That's tough. We've seen it with teenagers and so on. So sometimes, you've got to choose another way of getting into society and learning Portuguese and so on than just throwing them in there, because it can become a horror.
So, Michael, this next question is going to be addressed to you. Public, private, or international? Which route really makes the most sense for an international family to go into? And maybe there's not one answer. So what should parents think about when they're comparing these different options?
Yeah, thanks, Anne, and same thank yous. It's a pleasure to be here with Tim and Gudmundur and yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, this is going to sound like an echo chamber from what Tim just said. I think the quick answer, and my own life and our kids' lives, are a good example of this. We've had our kids in private schools, we've had them in public schools. We don't really have like a fixed recipe for which one we think is better. We had our kids in an international charter school in the United States. We've had kids in a public-private kind of mishmash here. So we've kind of experienced all the various offerings that Portugal and the U.S. have to offer. And I think the quick answer is there's really no universally best option. Public school might be the right choice for one of your kids, and for the other one, they might be better off in a private or international school. So, and I think, as Tim said, the real question is, which one is going to give the most opportunity for your child to thrive, and also the question of which one's going to be the best fit for the kind of life that you have as a family. I would say, people sometimes, especially at the university level, we get so hung up on rankings, and the marketing game, and U.S. News and World Report, and people aren't so familiar with the Portuguese schools, so they want to know rankings. I think if I have one sort of motto, I think kids tend to succeed the most where they feel they belong. If they've got good friends, they've got teachers that they can talk to and access, even if it's just one of their teachers. I think that's really kind of half the battle.
And I think both to Michael and Tim's points about, I think, getting to know your children, and it might sound strange to say that, but having conversations with your children about what is it that they would like to have, in terms of their education. Have they have negative experiences at school? Finding the right school for them, we understand is a challenging thing to do, but I think you can get around that by really engaging with schools, whether it's a public school, a private school, an international school, or a mishmash, as Michael says, of these different aspects or different identities of schools. I think engaging with them, and if you can, actually be in country, although of course we understand that that's not always possible, but meeting people online then, and having your child as well, if they're old enough and interested enough, to actually engage with the school too. Yeah, sure. Language is if you're wanting to really integrate into Portuguese society, then the language is obviously a huge piece of that. So prior to coming to Portugal, maybe think about language classes for your children. Portuguese language classes. Visiting Portugal, getting to know the place where they're going to be spending the next chapter of their lives. But I think, to my point of engaging with the school and really trying to get a feel for what the school, what is the ethos of the school about? We can talk about university rankings and academic results. Sure, these are important things. But having worked in lots of different kinds of schools, you can achieve great rankings and great results through quite a traditional conservative approach, and possibly through an approach that doesn't actually put the children first. That is absolutely possible. The curriculum is important, but again, whether it's the International Baccalaureate or the AP, the American AP, or whichever curriculum it is, schools can deliver those curriculum in a very human-centric way. And they can deliver them in a way that really doesn't place the child first. And everywhere in between, there's a sort of gradation along that scale. So I think really engaging with people, trying to, as much as you can, get a feel for the ethos of the school, the values of the school, what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to do.
So that's an interesting question. How do you integrate these international children coming into Portugal and take them out of that expat bubble?
Well, I think one of the things you can do, for example, is that we we're very blessed to be in a great location in the city, in Alcantara, which is right by the 25th of April Bridge. And one of the things that I'm so amazed by in Lisbon is just the amount of cultural opportunity that there is. I don't think I've ever lived in a city with so many different museums, for example. I say museums because my background is in archaeology, so I have a particular passion for the past and for museums. So we adopt this approach that we call the city as a classroom. So we take kids out almost daily to go out into the city, to learn about Lisbon, to engage with the people of the city, and to learn about its history, about its past and its culture. So I think that's really important. And I think something that parents can also do is get engaged in activities outside of school as well.
If I could just add something, in the public schools in Portugal don't really do sport and dance and all those kinds of things. So if it's also the parents' responsibility that if you put them in a school and you really want this integration, to join the local soccer club and the local, even there's American football, there's a baseball, there's cricket, there's all these other sports, and the club culture is very strong here. So it's not the school's culture in sport that's very strong here. So even in private schools, the sport isn't really as strong as, in some other countries. And I think parents also have to be part of the solution. Parents have to travel throughout the countries. Parents have to really integrate, because there's just so much happening. And the clubs are very strong. The swimming clubs, you've got the sharks, the bull sharks, you've got all these things. So if the parents are part of the educational solution, your kids are really going to integrate and do you've just got to understand that education won't just be left to the school. I think that's the big thing I'm trying to tell you. If you've come for this experience, you might as well, really be part of it and be with your kids. Serve.
And to me, that's really what we all want, is for our kids to find their path.
So let me ask you, what human skills become more important in an AI-driven world? Critical thinking, curiosity, creativity, communication, adaptability.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great list. I think certainly not trusting AI, right? That should be maybe lesson number one, right? And a lot of, I think, faculty are designing assignments where they integrate AIs in a way that forces the students to be critical of the content that they get from AI. Because it does hallucinate and it doesn't necessarily give you all the right answers. So trying to design exercises for students to be more critical citizens, and to realize that, AI is not going to participate for you. You need to become an advocate for the values that you feel strongly about. So, preparing people for democratic citizenship, I think that's another key role of any school, right? And that's not something that we're going to be able to outsource to AI. At least I hope not.
Don't worry. We're going to wind up now. And I think one of the things that has come through very clearly today is that there is no single best education. And there's the education that's right for your kid. And maybe our job as parents is not to find the school with the best reputation, the most beautiful campus, or the biggest list of university acceptances. Maybe our job is to understand the human being that's sitting right in front of us. Who are they? How do they learn? What makes them curious? Where do they struggle? What kind of environment allows them to flourish? And we've seen a lot of that today. We've seen different varied methods to this. And I think we just need to have the courage to ask whether the education that we're choosing for them is simply going to succeed in a school environment, or is this really going to prepare them for life? Because our kids are going to go into a world that is just completely unpredictable to us right now. AI is going to change everything. Technology, it will change it. The way we work is going to change. Everything is going to change. And maybe the greatest gift we can give our kids isn't certainty. Maybe it's the ability to navigate that uncertainty, to learn how to think through this, to question, to communicate, to adapt, to be curious, to understand what other, maybe one of the most valuable things they'll learn when they come to Portugal is to understand other cultures. What we value, I think, is really going to start to change. And the relationships that we're building and the way that we communicate is going to change with that. So hopefully, to find something in this world that gives them purpose and joy is what school systems are going to be doing along with the traditional education method. And to everyone that joined us, thank you so much. The response to this webinar has been really extraordinary. We were so happy. I think it shows just how much parents want to have this conversation. And that's exactly why we created the Portugal Diaries. Moving to another country isn't really about buying a house. It's about building a life. And that means understanding the things that actually shape our daily lives: healthcare, education, community, culture, and belonging. How do we do that? We're going to continue to explore these subjects in future episodes. And I thank you for joining us from Portugal, the United States, and wherever else you may be watching from. I'm Ann Brightman, and this has been the Portugal Diaries, Raising Global Kids in Portugal. And thank you, everyone. Until next time.